Okay, thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. This is another video in my series on composition. In these compositions, I played around a little bit more of a kind of a deeper space, getting into a worm's eye view. If you have kind of larger scale objects, bigger people, bigger whatever, especially, my little snail here from 100 Proof Press. That's the name of the rubber stamp company. You're really pushing the terms of the scene in terms of the spatial distance that you're defining, okay? If I had this ledge here and I put, a pine tree on it or something like that, we're saying that that ledge is much larger, but when you put a snail on it, you're saying that you are really at a worm's eye view, looking into the scene, okay? And that's kind of fun to play around with, in terms of a really deep spatial kind of a framework for a composition. Okay, now another thing I did too on the last series of compositions that I did for this series on scale and perspective in composition, I talked about Scenic, the Scenic sentiment sheets. It could be any type of quote stamp, word stamp. You could have a happy birthday or something like that. But, where you place those does matter. But, in terms of having it kind of floating on here, I don't know. Having it higher up in the composition doesn't necessarily mean that it's farther away. There's no telling how close those word stamps are to you, and you can really place them anywhere. In terms of scenic stamping, though, I would recommend that you have, kind of a blank or not too complex background behind your words, letter forms and word forms, so that you can read it much easier. If I did that, stamp like that over the top of this, you wouldn't be able to see it at all because it's too busy in the background, okay? But anyways, just leaving space in terms of your compositions for those word stamps if you wanted to use it. And this was just a little scrap test thing that I was doing, but this is just a really nice simple composition. I could just do a little bit of tone around here, but you can put words out here if you want to. There's a big, huge space for it. And that would be perfect for it. Or you can do some little journaling or something like that, and that would be kind of cool in a composition like such as that. So anyway, I hope this series has come in handy for you. I think I'm kind of getting close to wrapping it up. I didn't really talk about too much about sky imagery, but I got into it a little bit here. But after doing all these compositions, I'm going to want to get into some of these and finish them off with some color, and I think that should be really fun. So anyways, if you choose to watch this video, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope this series has come in handy for you in terms of how to start with your compositions and just some of the basics on your arrangements and how to use your scenic stamping elements. Okay, continuing on with our series on scale and perspective and composition, I wanted to stamp out this image again that was kind of featured in the last video and leave actual room for it this time for some quote stamps or a quote stamp. Alright, this is the Blooms and Bridge stamp, and there were a couple different flower quotes in the Scenic Sentiment series of quote stamps. And this would be a good one, right? A good one. Silently, one by one, in the infinite meadows of heaven, blossom the lovely stars, the forget-me-nots of the angels. Now, I could do something like this and have some kind of sky up here, maybe, and maybe make it a nighttime type of scene, and I could feature both stars. And I was thinking about making those stars kind of the, I don't know, kind of in the moonlight, have these flowers down here kind of white and kind of make them relate to kind of the stars up in the sky. And I thought that would be kind of an interesting way to do it, and stamping that something like that up here. There's another good one here, Earth Laughs and Flowers, and I thought that would be kind of a neat composition as well. And I thought I would do something like that. I don't want to spend too much time on this design because I spent so much time, you know, basically the entire video, the previous video on that, but I thought I would do something like this, okay? Now, when we're speaking of perspective, you know, I've been talking about a lot of background, midground, and foregrounds, really close foregrounds to you, but sometimes in scenic stamping, I mean, you know, it doesn't have to have those various distances within a scene, okay? And I've kind of done something like that before. I call it kind of sketchbook stamping, you know, where you're just kind of featuring this stamp itself and coloring it in, and you don't have to have, you know, this huge array of elements around it going off the page, okay? So I thought I would use something like this right here, this maple pear, okay? I'm not going to use it as so much as a tree in the distance, but I thought I would do something like some bushes right here, okay? And when I'm doing that, I'm just going to do that in the spirit of kind of creating a little bit of a hedge for my quote stamp, which is really going to be kind of the main subject matter of the scene, okay? I have those little bushes out there, like the tops of some trees, right? And maybe I can bring some of it around here, like it's kind of like it's a garden, okay? You know, some different foliage elements, okay? Like something like this. Alright, so that kind of blends in. So we're not going too deep in space. We have our foreground, and in a sense, I mean, that's going to be, you know, our background, although we're not talking about deep space at all, okay? Alright, so not a deep field of imagery at all, okay? And let's say that this garden is going to be more of a, kind of a more of a, not a real structured garden. Kind of more of a wild one, maybe. So I'll put some reeds, some nice, kind of grassy reeds, or ornamental grasses, perhaps, growing in the garden. I really love ornamental grasses in landscaping. Okay, something like that. And let's take a look at this quote stamp right here, Earth Laughs and Flowers. Alright, this is one of those instances when stamp positioners work pretty good, but I'm just going to have, my eyes are going to have to be my stamp positioner. In this case, what I want to do is I just want to get this as horizontal as I can. Okay, let's see, where do I want this to go? Maybe somewhere like that. I'm thinking about some other elements in here as well, but we'll see. Quote stamps, where do you put them? Is there a right or wrong? Could be in the background, could be in the foreground. If I stamp it right here, it kind of exists in its own plane, I would say. Let's go up a little ways, like up here. Okay. If this comes out a little bit kind of crooked, that's not really going to matter to me. It doesn't matter to me because it's what's done is done and I can't do anything about it, so no matter what it comes out, I just make an agreement with myself that I'll be fine with it. So see, I'm never really displeased with whatever turns out because I cover my bases ahead of time. And plus, you know, I mean, rubber stamping, come on. I mean, it's supposed to be kind of a retreat from, you know, the daily things that might come up, you know, that could be, you know, potentially stressful in life or whatever, or the things that just, you know, could, you know, necessitate some, I don't know, extra consideration. For me, rubber stamping really is, you know, an excuse to just kind of just really sit down and really to enjoy ourselves, isn't it? Okay, that's the Sedge filler used up there. I had a little bit of extra space in there, so filling in with that. And let's put a little bit more depth. Let's go back to our maple pear. And there is something really weird with this paper towel. I think when I tore it, I tore like one ply. Yeah, I think the plies are coming out. Sometimes one ply is just a little bit too thin, so okay. Okay, some extra little bushes. Something like that. That's kind of fun. And I think some little birds would be kind of nice. I'm just looking around on my table right now to see if I have any of my little birds or something like that that I can put in here. But anyways, I mean, we're not talking about deep space in here, right? We have foreground, and how far back is that? I mean, I really don't know. But then this kind of exists, I don't know, on a different plane. It's floating in air. It could be very far back. It could be closer to us. It doesn't really matter. Quotes are kind of one of those things that, or words, you know, especially if you leave some space around them. They could be any distance in here, so that really doesn't apply to kind of the, you know, the anchor points in terms of a visual reference of an object that you would know kind of the size of. How big is a, you know, a quote? It wouldn't be kind of existing, you know, out in nature. We won't come around a corner and see this big quote, you know, of something. So it exists on in its own kind of I don't know, state, I guess you can say. But anyways, we could maybe put some little clouds around it or something like that, or I'd just leave it, and I would probably put a little bit of streaks of color in here, and kind of define some sort of a cloudy area in there. But I find that that's kind of a nice little composition, or compositional foundation too. I can think of all kinds of little things I would do up here. I would carry these flowers out into here in terms of the color that I would choose to do them in. And then I'd put little spot colors right through here, you know, and that would be really fun. So anyways, kind of a much more narrow, shallower depth of field within the scene like this. Okay, so let's look at some other quote stamps, okay? And let's bring in a different element, okay? Now, in this instance, I was looking at, I think it was this, oh yeah, adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience. And I have this snail right here, which would be really perfect for that quote, wouldn't it? It would kind of reiterate the spirit of that, what that quote's going after, you know, a snail. Oh, here's another thing that would be really good. Art as a harmony, parallel with nature, you know, and that's by Paul Cézanne, but Paul Cézanne was one of the Impressionists, right? While this isn't, you know, an Impressionist style of drawing or something like that, you know, bright colors and things like that could be applied in here. So something like that Cézanne quote would be really nice in here as well. But this Secret nature and patience would be a really good one for this. And I think there was something else. There was another quote stamp that would be good with this snail. I don't know, anything about patience would be good. But let's do something with that now. Now, I was showing you some different ways to approach foreground, okay, and we did use this tree in the last video a couple different times, but I want to show you something with that again, okay? So, and I also wanted to get into some sky figures, okay? I haven't done too much of that in this compositional series yet. Alright, now I want to leave, I don't know, a pretty good amount of space here in terms of the vertical format of this composition. Okay, so we're stamping out our Lakeside Cove, like so. Alright, now, I do have this snail in mind, but let's start off with this one first. Alright? Let's throw a moon in here. Let's... should I do it? Let's just throw it right in the middle there. Okay. I should have pressed a little bit harder on those trees, but no big deal. Okay, we have a moon there, and I'll kind of roughly line up those moons again for another impression of it so that it's reflected in the water. Okay, so we have a background moon. There'll be kind of a foreground moon reflection. Alright, now I'm going to do it like that. I'm going to mop off some of this, with a dry paper towel. Okay, just so it's, especially when stamping it out on black. I would do it in a blue or something like that if I was doing a color scene right here, but we're just talking about compositions, okay? You can watch other videos for color. But this is just strictly about scene building and the use of imagery. Alright. Okay, so that'll be roughly about like so. Okay, so that's what we have right now. It's a little bit off center, but so be it. Close enough for me. Okay, now let's build up a little bit of foreground here, okay? I was thinking about doing like a fallen tree, okay? It's fun stamping this one out kind of on its side sometime. Let's build it up even more. Speaking of compositions, okay? Let's put a little bit of this sedge filler in the foreground, right? Something like that. Pretty easy. We have our black here. And let's mask off that sedge filler down there. Again, alright, I should just get a new paper towel. This is crazy. Okay, I just ripped that for me. That might be a little bit too jagged. Let's see if I have a... it's a little bit smoother right there. Okay, so let's lay down some of this tree trunk, okay? Which way do I want to go? Let's go like this. Okay, I think I moved that a little bit. right there. It's a little bit blurred. But again, it's really not a big deal. When you end up coloring things in it, anything like that is kind of eradicated anyway. Okay, let's do a little bit of sandwiching here, okay? Coming in here, and I'm putting a little bit of grass, or sedge filler, behind it now, okay? So it's kind of like a branch, a log that's kind of fallen down. It's, some grass has had time to grow around it. A little bit of that behind there, like so. Okay, now we have our snail. Okay, this snail is not a Stampscapes image. It is by 100 Proof Press. Okay. Alright. Are you going to focus for me? My autofocus is stuck. There we go. 100 Proof Press. Okay. And it is image number 3128. And there's an R in front of it. What that means, I don't know. I got it a long, long time ago. And I'm just eyeballing this in terms of the positioning of it. Okay. Trying to get it on that log. I'll see how I do. Alright. So there we go. We have some of that log showing through it, but I would color this in so that, and I'd put a little bit of shading down there, okay? That is the snail. Now I have this area in here that I could kind of fill in. I could fill it in with streaks of color with my use of my, sponging method here, like something like that. Or I can also fill it in with something like some water texture. I don't know if I have that water texture right on my desk here, so maybe I won't, but okay, so what do we have here? We have background, kind of deep space, imagery. We have our landscape background, which is our foundation too. It's a Lakeside Cove. Going farther down, we have our reflection on the water. Okay, so it's getting closer to us. Much farther down, we have this area down here, okay? And our snail. Let's go in here and add some foreground imagery again, a little bit closer to us, okay? Check it out. There's some reeds. Blades of grass. I don't want to cover up my snail completely, okay? But see, here's some reeds that are a little bit higher up on the composition, right? But now let's have those reeds, grass texture, all the way down here. So we have kind of multiple layers of depth within our foreground. And now see, if I was doing this in color, I could color some of these grass reeds dark green or something like that. And the ones I do closer to us, farther down on the composition, I could do those in black, so that way I'd have some depth in terms of visual space, using value within the very shallow area of the foreground. So foreground doesn't have to be all the same color, okay? And you'll see me do that in a lot of the other videos out there. I'll kind of push depth a little bit right in the foreground areas. Again, with the use of value. Okay. Oh, here's another stamp right here. Here's the reeds. It's the smaller one. Okay. You see the different sizes. And why don't we push depth a little bit in terms of scale? Why don't I mask off that top of that sedge filler there. Okay. About like so. And why don't we create a little bit more depth with the use of scale. Okay. It doesn't have to be, you know, this reed small. I mean, you can do it with the reeds large too if you want to, but if you have scale that you can kind of play with, around with, if you have it, might as well use it. It just happened to be right in front of me, so I'm just using it. I mean, I could play around with that too. Let's go in the foreground a little bit more. Something like that. Okay. How it looks, a little bit cluttered. Color will kind of mellow out all of that real busyness, okay? It won't be so, like, black on white. It'll be black on tone in the distance there. But look how much, you know, having that snail down there really pushed the distance in here, okay? We have a reference point right here, and generally we know how large snails are. So that really pushes us up to almost like a worm's eye view, we call it, okay, when you have something really large in the foreground like that in terms of a reference point, in terms of scale, okay? So something like that is really close to us. You know, and having that thing really close to us, well, you know, it really does open up some possibility. I could put this even right here, which would be a typical foreground. And I can make it as a midground, meaning that this thing is so big in terms of scale. Maybe I will do that. This is the Pines and Rocks, the smaller one. Let's see how that will look. Since this is about scale and composition, let's really try to push it here and add something else in intermediate distance. And, you know, if we can do it on kind of a small format like that, we can do it in a larger format. Sometimes you ink up some stamps and it just doesn't look inked up, right? You know what I mean? Let me make sure that's... Yeah, let me see. Let me stamp it on a piece of glossy. I need to make sure that's nice and dark. Yeah, it is. I don't know. I don't know why that looks kind of light. Alright. Building up a little bit of ink on that. Okay, where do I want this to go? Let's go right about there. Okay, something like that. And how about that over there? About like so. I'm just using about a third of the image, okay? Most of it is going off the page, but I do color up more than I think that I'll need, just because I don't want to lift that up and kind of have, you know, a big gap in between there. So anyways, we have some really deep space in here, including that. Now this would be a fun one to define in terms of values and color, okay? Or values and tone, I should say. I would have that light, the reflected light, light again, so it'd probably go, you know, a little bit dark up here, light, dark here. I'd have those rocks reflecting some light, dark down here, light, and dark down here. And why? Because I want that snail to kind of stand out. That snail is kind of, you know, a fairly prominent subject within the scene. Create some shadows right down here by these rocks, but having this little area dark in between are different points of light. This would be kind of like a spotlight on the snail, okay? And probably dark down here. I'll do something with tone on this one in a future video, but pretty busy there, but, you know, background, I don't know, I consider that background too. Midground, and very close to our eye foreground here. Okay. Alright. So that one was kind of fun. Oh, let's do something again here. I think I forgot what I was going to do on that one. That happens. These videos are completely unrehearsed, you know. I kind of just look at my stamps and pull them out. But I was going to do something with this, wasn't I? Adopt a pace of nature. I was going to use that, not just reference it in terms of a composition to stamp. But okay, let me do that one. Let's do something here. I'll do a different one. Let's see. Let's stamp out this ledge stamp, okay? Let's go like this. Okay. Where's this? I didn't. Here, let me use more ink here. I'm trying to hurry. That would be a good argument for a stamp positioner, one to, you know, to stamp that again. Or I don't know. Let me see that here. I was just going to grab another piece of paper. Let me see. This is our old style of stamp positioner. It's just kind of eyeballing it and going down like so. Where is it? Oh, I didn't get it perfect, but let me see. Yeah, it's not too bad, huh? It's off a little bit. It's off like a 1/16 of an inch or something like that. Add that on here. Let me use a little bit more pressure, like I always talk about, right? All right. That's not too bad, right? That's an old-fashioned style of stamp positioner. Our eyes. I probably would have been able to get that perfectly before, but maybe not anymore. Okay. Getting this. Here's what I'm doing. I have this snail like this when I'm talking about stamp positioner, and I'm looking at it from an angle like that, and see, I'm just going like this, and I have my head down underneath this piece of wood. If you're using an acrylic block, you would do it like that. But I'm just trying to line it up like that, and that's the stamp positioner, you know. Not really a stamp positioner, I'm just saying that, but that's the positioning method that I tend to use, okay? Alright, so we have this little snail crawling along here. And it's down at the bottom of the page. It's obviously foreground because it's really quite large. Oh yeah, I think that I was doing, if you watch this other video, I was trying to think of the name of that series. I think it was The Land of the Giants, you know. It's that family that got shrunk down, and this is like in the 60s or 70s. But anyways, that's kind of their view of things, you know. Or you can call it a worm's eye view, too. Okay. Adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience. Be great for like a waterfall scene too, you know, or something like that. A large mountain, you know, pace of nature. But I like the idea of water. Kind of water's kind of the great landscaper, you know, the great sculptor of you know, of land, right? So that would be really a perfect one, a river or something like that. Okay, let's put this one up here again, some kind of quote. Okay. Kind of makes a nice statement like that, you know, just to color this in, especially, well, this is glossy paper, but if I did on matte paper, it'd be kind of nice to just color this in with some colored pencil or something like that, and just, that would be, you know, the statement right there. You can, the card can be done. You don't have to have everything around it, you know, if you don't want to. It doesn't need to either, in my opinion. I think this looks kind of cool as is in terms of a thing, but we're talking about composition and perspective, and You know, I don't want to do this. There's your foreground, there's no background, okay? So I think it looks great as is, or just fine, I should say, as is. But let's just add in some other type of element, maybe. How about this? This would be good right here. Okay. Kind of a non-deep space composition. This is just your oak branch right here. And where is this oak branch? What does this represent in terms of distance? Is it closer to us than the snail? Is it farther away? I don't know. Okay, something like that, right? It's very simple. So not everything in scenic stamping is this kind of composition that represents like a snippet from, you know, a greater scene, okay? Sometimes when you work kind of in a much more simple, limited capacity, it's kind of defining something just as a composition into itself. I mean, I try to do that with larger compositions too. I put a vignette around it, you know, to really kind of close things off a touch. But this really is a statement of simplicity in terms of you know, something just being a simple statement, which all of our cards really are. It doesn't have to be scenic stamping, but they're kind of worlds and pieces unto themselves, right? It's not something where you think, where you look at it and say, oh gosh, I wish I knew it was, you know, an inch over more to the right or something like that, or oh, that looks great, but, you know, if only I could see like this part over here, you know, if the scene were to continue. But doing something like this, you know, that kind of frames it off a little bit more. Now, what we had was foreground, but we have something even closer. Now that I've overlapped this ledge stamp, what we're saying is that that branch is much closer to us, right? And it is, it's high and above, but again, when we have overhanging things like that, it represents something that's going down much lower and planted into the earth, and we're just, you know, it's kind of just hanging into the scene like that. In this case, it's, you know, it works as a really good framing device, and it brings the viewer's attention right on in here to that. Okay, we have some space down here too, and I could put, you know, some clouds. All right, let me just do something right here. I'm just working all in black. And you'll have to indulge me here in terms of bringing at least one other color into it. I think it would be kind of interesting. All right. I think I used black on this cloud last, so I'm going to have to clean it off a little bit. Or a lot. Okay. Alright. Good enough. Okay. Marvy Salvia blue would be good. Let's just use the Memento Summer Sky. Okay, and let me make sure that there isn't too much of that black still on here. Summer Sky is a very, very light tone, isn't it? See that? Okay, let's see here. It's so light that I probably don't need to do this, but I just will. Anyway. But I'll put a little bit over that snail just to kind of mask it off a little bit. Okay, and let's go in and add a few little clouds in the background. Okay. I'm just kind of wiping off the top of these clouds right here just so I don't have that darkness right there. Which is there for a reason, but in this case we have this kind of real open area in the middle, so I want this to be open. So what I'm doing is I'm doing this cloud like that where the center area is the kind of illuminating area and the tops of the clouds are always the part that's illuminated. So if the light is coming from, you know, the right, I have to twirl this where it's facing that, and the opposite is true on the other side. So here we go right here. And remember, dye-based inks are transparent, so stamping a light blue over the black, you're not going to have light blue showing over the black, okay? The darker color is always going to look like it's closer to us. Okay, let's see. Another paper towel here. Let's do a little bit of masking off of the ledge. Don't need to do too much, but something like this. You know, a lot of people say, well, Kevin, you make it look so easy. And I would say, well, it is, but I know where everyone's coming from. You have to kind of make things easy, all right? I mean, you saw where I stamped out that ledge, and I didn't stamp it out enough, and I just stamped over it again. Now, if I was way off, like a 1/4 inch, it would look kind of weird. It would look like, you know, you're looking through a, I don't know, 3D glasses or something like that. It's something, you know, or watching a 3D movie that's not, you know, without the glasses, everything's a little bit off center. But, I mean, coloring it in or something like that would fix that. I mean, on this one right here, I stamped that, you know, snail a little bit down too low, but I know I can color in, and that will fill in that area right there. You know, so there's always things, you know, from experience that I know I can do, but it doesn't mean that I get everything exactly right the first time, all right? There's just other things I know that will compensate for that, or it'll eradicate that. In scenic stamping, it's the most forgiving form of rubber stamping, in my opinion. If I get something completely, you know, wrong somewhere that looks terrible, I drop a stamp or something like that, or something like that happens, you just stamp, you know, some big image right over the top of it, right? And you can't even see it, right? And unless it's some super key element, you know, where you just can't do that, it's not really going to be a big deal, you know, so. Anyway, so there's that little cloud in there, but kind of that's a nice little composition right here, you know, our foundation. I think coloring into some of these rocks right here, and certainly the snail. But anyways, what are we talking about in terms of scale and compositional placement of something like that? In this case, my foreground is really kind of circling this area right here. I don't have some of that branch down here, but I certainly could put, you know, a piece of it down here. So it's kind of circling it. So again, it's kind of like you're looking, you know, you're a viewer of the image looking into it like that. But the foreground is very high and very low, okay? We have that background now. What was the background before? It was the quote, kind of, unless that quote really could, it's floating right in space. But by putting that cloud in the background, you know, that's a very definitive background image now, okay? It's deep space, right? So that we have background, and I don't know, I really consider this foreground right here. But we do have something, some element that's even closer to us. So I guess within the foreground there's a little bit of a, you know, a change in distance, visual distance, by having something like that. You know, and just by the very nature. I mean, if I masked that branch off right, or that ledge right here, and that branch went behind the ledge, then this would clearly be the thing that is the closest thing to us, okay? But, you know, this one is stamped in front of it. It could have been done either way. I mean, we could do stuff like this too. We could put, you know, there's those, you know, that grass stamp. Again, that grass could be down here, and that would, you know, that would be something that is perhaps even closer to us, especially if I stamped it right over the top of the oak branch leaves. Okay, something like, I don't know. Would that be good? I use this on everything. Oh, I tell you what, I'll just purposely not do it on here, even though I think it would look pretty good. But background, midground, foreground. The foreground, you know, I guess, you know, contains the midground in here in terms of something like that. So, anyway, so I've just been doing, that cloud would look really good in here too, wouldn't it, around in that area. But we'll start to play around with value in terms of distance. But I think you're getting the point here. You know, the higher up, just in general, I mean, the sky is, you know, generally higher up here than the foreground. I mean, if we had a, you know, a little ledge, like, let's say I had, you know, I've seen people use this ledge too, like this, okay? And what it is, or they've twirled it around. Let me do something really quickly for you. Instead of, I don't know, we're not limited to time on these videos. Maybe your patience is in terms of watching it, but luckily YouTube doesn't have a set thing in terms of how long these videos can be. But let's say this ledge is something like this, okay? Alright. And you just use it around like this. I'm kind of changing the angle and overlapping, just like I would that, you know, the cloud. You can do that with things like this too. Okay. Easy, right? No masking involved. So it's always one of those things. This type of compositional placement and scenic stamping, it really is easy. You just have to make it easy for yourself and free yourself up in doing that. But what I'm getting at here is, here we have this composition. Okay, that's, what are we doing? We're looking, you know, we could have fallen down a hole or something like that, and we're looking up or something like that. But this could be some sort of cave, you know, type of thing. Then you could put some kind of scenery in the background. It'd be kind of interesting to have some kind of sea thing in here where we're like in the sea cave and put a little boat out there. But, you know, the top of this is now foreground as well. Probably. I mean, I could put a bush or something like this in here, but, you know, but this top part, again, it's anchored down to the bottom, right? That's what it's kind of reflective of. Just like, you know, overhanging tree limbs or something like that. But that's just to say you can have things, you know, up high that are indeed a part of the foreground types of imagery. But just in general, the higher you put things up, the farther they are away in terms of, you know, reference point. Okay. And the lower you go in the composition, most of the times what I do is I have it coming off the card and into it like that. That represents something that's very close to us, okay? So, quote stamps, you know, word stamps, they're kind of floating in there. I guess you could have them on something. If I stamp them lower down, it'd probably be part of the foreground, you know, if I had something like that down in here, if there was some kind of quote on moonlight or something like that. You know, it probably would be represent something that's a little bit closer to us, especially if there's imagery in the background. But how close is it to us? I don't know. It could be floating, you know, or something like that. I guess I could do a shadow stamping thing of that where I kind of play around with kind of the format where you put a little bit of, you stamp that again in shadow, so you're saying that this is kind of, you know, we have deep space, but then you're kind of flattening out the format by putting a little bit of a shadow, you know, stamping out that image in like a lighter tone or something like that. That'd be kind of interesting where you're playing with the format of the scene. You know, you're talking about deep space, but then you have a, you know, a shadow, you know, going like that. So, but anyways, not to get too complicated, you know, about that whole aspect of it. But there are various things that you can always do, okay? All right, now let me do something. Let me go get a little canoeist or something like that. Let's put something else in here again, and being that we're talking about distance and scale. Okay, here's some 3 little images. Well, probably not, a little bit too busy. If I stamped out that moon in like a blue or something like that, I could do this and that would really stand out. But let's see, I was thinking about this bird. Alright, I can't stamp this bird in here. I was thinking about it, but if I stamped out this bird, it would say that, you know, this high, right? Oh, sorry. It would say that that bird is some kind of like prehistoric gigantic bird, you know, that's almost as high as these trees. It'd have to be much farther down like that. Maybe its head could be poking out from the, you know, the background or something like that, but probably not. I don't think that's suitable for that, but you know, something like this could be this little canoeist in here. Okay. Like that. I don't like him in there though, because that's Snail. But when you put this, you know, farther back in the distance like that, it would say that that canoeist is much farther away, right? Alright, so let's leave that out of there. Both of these. I don't like it. Alright, let's do something like this, though. Here's these little birds. And, I tell you what, let's damp them off a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Alright, let's stamp it off a little bit. What do you get when you get a drier black? You get gray, right? Where should this go? Something like this would be kind of nice, I think. Something like that. Some birds in the distance. They're a little bit lighter because I stamped them off. Could have been even lighter than that. Maybe that would have been better. But that looks okay, I think. Earth laughs and flowers. I don't know. Maybe birds are, you know. It's a springtime type of scene. Let me wipe off some more of these birds in here so that the more distant ones are a little bit lighter. I tell you what. Let me wipe off that bottom one completely. Removing that ink. And let's go like this. Okay, some little birds flying in the distance like that. I would have this blue up here or something like that, but you see where I've kind of mopped off some of it so that it's a little bit darker, and as they move farther away, it's like they're moving into the light, so they become lighter, okay? Something like that. It looks kind of weird right now because I need some other tone around here, but anyway. I don't think those birds would look good down here, of course, you know? If I did that, they'd look like butterflies or something like that, you know? but you stamp them off in the distance, higher up, and they're birds. So, 3 different compositions, really pushing the space, playing around with quote stamps or text was kind of fun. Playing around with imagery that are kind of anchored in a foreground, but continuing on higher up in the composition, like that. These in the form of these oak branches up here, and something like this ledge, as if it was there in a cave or something like that. Okay. And again, those quote stamps are really fun elements in scenic stamping. Could be something like if you had a birthday card or something like that, or you don't even have to really have a stamp. Okay, if you're stamping out a scene, something like that, what's really fun is to incorporate some of the hand of the artist, so to speak, so you can write something, thinking of you or something like that, or happy birthday so-and-so, and just write it right over the top of, a scene. And I think it kind of takes on a little bit of a real personal touch, or gives it a personal touch. And it also becomes somewhat of like a journal piece, okay? You know how people do like sketches out in the field, or if you're just kind of doodling around in a sketchbook, and you can finish a scene like that, but you can kind of do your writing. You can do your writing right over the top of it, especially if it gets darker, or, you can do it in the theme of your whatever color scheme you're working with in these colored gel pens, and it's kind of fun. Maybe I'll do that sometime on one of these scenes, or one of these compositions that I'm doing. But anyway, I was going to say 4 more scenes here, but 3 more, dealing with deep space and whatnot. I didn't even get into value in terms of creating space and distance within the scene. You stamp at your background images in a lighter value than your foreground, and you're really going to push the spatial kind of relationships within a scene, and it'll separate the layers of distance that you've established. Okay, it's not a hard thing. This is a very basic example of that. Here we have a light cloud and a dark tree, right? And that creates a lot more distance than if you just stamped out your sky imagery in the same exact color as your other types of imagery in there. Okay, so you can see how much more that tree really stands out against the background. Okay, so thanks for watching. Hope this has been helpful. And if you have any questions, drop me a note, or if you'd like to see anything used specifically in compositional arrangement, just let me know.